Hello, everyone, and welcome to Advocate with Michelle, IEPs and Back to School. Please keep in mind that I'm recording this session. I'm going to be posting it on my Advocate for Michelle with Michelle Facebook pages and YouTube channels. But yeah, our topic today is back to school and IEPs, and I hope that you find a lot of value in this presentation today. I will also be posting this presentation. There are lots of ways to reach me, and they're all posted here. So let's go ahead and get started. Parents with students with disabilities are just like every other parent, right? We're going back to school. We're full of excitement, energy, dread, sometimes frustrations, fears. All the emotions are there like every parent, except that there's this extra layer of preparing for the school year. And so I'm hoping today to give you really practical tips and suggestions for how you can make that happen. In a little while, we're going to be looking at the Maryland online IEP, which most of you, I think, are in Maryland. But we're going to be looking at some ways to use the IEP to successfully start the school year. And when we look at your child's IEP, one of the things we want to focus on is what goals the child is working on. And so in all IEPs, and Maryland included, what we're going to see on a goal is we're going to see not only what the goal will be, and do keep in mind this is a template version of the Maryland online IEP. So this isn't populated with any student information, but the structure is here. The goal is first, and of course the goal contains conditions, behavior, time frame, and method of measurement and criteria. And that's what we want to focus on when preparing for the school year. What methods of measurement and what criteria are the teachers going to be using in order to track your child's progress? When communicating with the teachers about um, tracking your child's progress, it's really important to also consider the timing of how much data is going to be collected for your student, and just get really clear about the expectations for that between you and your child's teachers. This is just another view of the time frame, method of measurement, and criteria. So method of measurement can be things like writing samples, time on task, data collection methods such as, positive reinforcement methodologies. The method of measurement can include any type of product, but what we want to avoid in an IEP is we want to avoid unclear methods of measurement such as observation and observation record. It's really important to look at data collection and data systems over more informal methods, so that there's the most chance of shared expectation, communication, and success. So it's really important to know, the details matter, and the details can really stress us out as parents. And so how much time do the teachers have to respond to an email? Will they be using an online messaging portal, or will they be using email, or a combination? And when will they use each one? Are phone calls scheduled? Can we schedule phone calls? There are many different logistics about the plan for communication. And in a fortunate situation, when you have teachers who on a child's IEP are required to have weekly or daily homeschool communication, it's very important to set up the structure for that as well, so that that supplementary aid and service can get implemented right away. Now, most of the students with disabilities, no matter what your child's disability, whether it's autism or a specific learning disability, an emotional disability, an intellectual disability, any of the above, other health impairment, ADHD, most of the students with disabilities in Maryland and all over are in the general education regular classroom. And so these are some important guiding questions that you can email to your teachers, or if you're meeting with your teachers for an orientation, you can say, I'm going to send you some questions. And if you wouldn't mind just taking some time to answer those questions, because on an IEP, there can be a number of hours of specially designed instruction or special education per day or per week, but there can be multiple providers. And in Maryland, it's very common to have a general educator, general education teacher, a special education classroom teacher, and even a paraprofessional or an instructional assistant on a child's IEP as a provider. And so in those situations, that instructional assistant needs specific training. That special education teacher and general education teacher need collaborative time, shared collaborative time to plan for how your child will be learning the curriculum and how the curriculum will be adapted. And so these are 10 very helpful guiding questions that you can certainly email or discuss with your child's school team. I mean, I think I'll just highlight, if the general education teacher is giving special education services, how do they know what to do? And when will they know when they're kind of taking off the general education teacher hat and putting on the special education teacher hat? What supports and tools and interventions will be helping my child achieve every day? And certainly when there's an instructional assistant providing any type of service, what training, education, background, and qualifications do they have? It's important to set up a progress monitoring system. And by the way, let me just pause and say, please feel free to use the chat. You can certainly come off mute, and you know the session is being recorded, but you can come off of mute and ask a question at any time. But please feel free also to use the chat feature, and I'll stop periodically, probably around every 12 or 15 minutes, to just entertain questions and see if there's any comments or discussion. So similar to using the IEP goals as that method of measurement and the criteria, how often will data be collected regarding my child's IEP goals, but also how will my child's behavioral goals or behavior intervention plan be implemented? So if your child has a behavior intervention plan, you know that on that behavior intervention plan, there are data systems that are set out within it. And so it's really important to take a look at that behavior intervention plan. And if you need help looking at it, please give me a call or send me an email. But please look at your child's behavior intervention plan to look for data collection, such as ABC data, which is antecedent behavior consequence data, what's happening before the behavior occurs, what's happening after. There's frequency data, how often the behavior is occurring, and a lot of different types of interval and duration data as well. So look at your child's behavior intervention plan. Now, if your child does not have a behavior intervention plan, then you might start out the school year, maybe by the end of a 1 month time, by the around 30-day mark, see how your child is doing behaviorally. But then in writing, you can ask for what's called a functional behavior assessment. Functional behavior assessment is the assessment that determines typically whether a student is going to receive or needs a behavior intervention plan. I think a nice, really personalized way of sharing information about your child with your child's teachers is an all about me or a similar type of one pager, like a poster of your child. These are some just suggestions of the types of things that can go on that poster. So not only do they have the teachers have a picture of your child, but also have some general information about your child. They can know your child's favorite things so that they can incorporate that into instruction, or know your child's favorite things in order to just form that rapport and personal relationship along with difficult things, so that you know as a parent what works for your child when they're having difficulty. So sharing that early on is a really good idea. I think that the theme here is clear. So I'm going to pause on this, ask about data collection um, slide, and ask if there's any questions or if there's any discussion. Would anyone like to add or share an experience of a great strategy that they employed for back to school where their child had an IEP? Okay, I see a question here about homework. So actually, let me get to that slide. That's a really important, we'll go back to these here. But we'll talk here about support learning at home without tears. So the question to me is about how do I make sure that my child is getting the right amount and type of homework? And that's a really important question, because if you're battling through homework, through the tears and through the tantrums, then the homework is not doing anything to support your child's achievement. So that's one important thing to remember. So homework is really independent practice and should be at an independent level. Parents should not have to sit at the desk or kitchen table or wherever your child is set up to do homework and reteach or teach or try to scramble and look at, you know, look at classroom materials, or go, look at Khan Academy about how to do a math problem. If your child's homework is too difficult, that's a really important point for communication for your teachers. As we know, homework is researched to not work when there are tantrums happening. So that was a really important question, and I really thank you for that. One way, often as an education consultant and an advocate, parents ask me, look, I think I've been asking the teachers to do X, Y, and Z for my student, and I just haven't gotten any traction. It's like I'm not communicating or using the same language. So one of the things I help parents do is really that translation services. Using the teacher language is very challenging to learn and takes many of us multiple degrees to learn how to do that. But one easy way to help out is to actually use your child's IEP in the communication, such as, I noticed that on page 23 of my child's IEP, it says that we're supposed to have weekly homeschool communication. How is the best way for that to get accomplished? But the point being that to effectively collaborate with teachers, it's important to, number one, keep things short. Number two, try to use information from your child's IEP in that communication and in that collaboration. And quote from the IEP when you can. But also get your child's schedules early. Your schedules of special education, of related services, meaning counseling, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy. What is the schedule of those? And it's generous to give everybody about a week or two to really get up and running. But getting that schedule even before the school year starts or right in the first week of school is really important, so that you can talk to your child's teachers, but so that you can also talk to your child and rehearse as needed with them what their schedules are. If there are any emotional, medical, or family updates, I know some parents are reticent to share all or some information. At the same time, it's really important for that homeschool communication and parent school partnership which is, of course, research to work for school success for students with disabilities. Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about learning at home without tears. So the homework, communicating about homework is extremely important. I know we do this in recognizing our child's achievements and celebrating our child's achievements normally, but it's even more important at the beginning of a school year, especially when your student is a student with a disability. Now, understanding your rights, you might say, well, Michelle, how does knowing my rights help my child start out the school year in a successful way? Well, there are several different parts of the procedural safeguards that are, I think, help parents feel empowered and also help parents understand where they might have gaps of knowledge. Now, if you ever want me to do one of these free sessions on any topic in your procedural safeguards, please just let me know and I'll go ahead and do that. But there are things such as, and I'm going to preview next week's topic, which is going to be what does a parent do when they disagree with the school district's evaluations? So if your school district is underway with evaluations and they come back and you review the report and you don't agree with it, what are your options? What are your rights to request a second opinion at public expense? And what are all the things that come along with that? So that's a good example of something good to know early in the school year as you move through the start of the school year and beyond. I really appreciate you being here today. I'm going to pause again for any other questions or any other information that you want to share, tips and tricks that have helped your child start off the school year right. And if you're not here today and you're listening to this or you're watching this, please come on over to my Facebook, my Twitter, my YouTube channel, and share your own stories, because parents learning from parents is really powerful and a good way to help parents feel empowered to advocate, educate, and overall come into the school year with their toolbox, their advocacy toolbox filled to the brim. So thanks again for being here today. Please do contact me. I look forward to speaking with you next Friday at noon. I will send out the Zoom link early in the year. As I'm closing up, I have a question here, so I'll go ahead and look at that. Oh, sure. This is a great question. A question from a listener or a watcher is, do I have any advice to share about moving from a 504 plan to an IEP? Sure. And if you email me, or if you message me, I can also email you some information about this. But I think the first thing to remember about moving from a 504 plan, which is, for those of you who are not aware, the 504 plan comes from the Rehabilitation Act of 1974, and it's commonly known as an accommodation plan. So the criteria for a 504 plan being under a different federal law and an IEP being under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act are different. So that's the first thing to remember. So under 504, a student has to have a mental or physical condition which substantially limits a major life function, such as learning, thinking, or concentrating. Under an IEP, however, the student has to meet the definition of one of the 14 different disabilities that are defined under the IDEA and Maryland law. So it's very important as a parent for you to know what those 14 different definitions are, and the criteria for an IEP is a lot different as well, I should say. the criteria for an IEP, it's not a substantial limitation on a major life function like a 504 plan, but instead it's an adverse effect on education, that the student's disability causes an adverse effect on education such that the child actually requires specially designed instruction. So again, to recap, under the Section 504 eligibility criteria, if your child already has a 504 plan, then they have a mental or physical documented condition that's known to substantially limit a major life function. But when we move into eligibility for an individualized education program or an IEP or special education services, that criteria changes to number one prong, meeting the definition of one of the disabilities. Number two prong is going to be that adverse effect on education. And number three prong is going to be the requirement for specially designed instruction or special education, which is defined as adapting the general education instruction. So that almost always requires a psychological evaluation in Maryland. Some states are different, such as Florida might not require the psychological evaluation, but in Maryland, it will typically require not only a referral to be sent. So what you want to do is you want to send a referral, meaning a letter, to the school system. And if you want an example of a referral letter, you can find one right here in my special needs advocacy resource book. I have a lot of sample letters and forms that you can use. But you just write a letter to your school and you say, look, my child has a 504 plan. I don't think it's adequate. And I think that my child needs specially designed instruction, or you can say special education services. I think my child needs an IEP. And then what should happen is a multidisciplinary team meeting should occur between you and all of the school staff, including a school psychologist, the counselor, the administrator, the special educator, the general educator, to determine, what suspected disabilities there might be.
I just had some granola bars. Yeah, I mean, I would just
Okay, I
have the
think that
potatoes too.
if you're not on mute, please, if you will mute yourselves. Otherwise, if you have a question, just jump on in and ask. So I'll just check the chat again. Did I answer your question? Okay, you said thank you and I'll contact you offline. Amazing. Oh, right. So thank you for that. I love off-topic questions. I can talk about special education and special education processes all day long, and I love to help parents. So thanks again for everyone for joining me, and please do share the posting here when I do share it on all my social medias. Please do share and tell your friends, and most of all, advocate with Michelle and have a wonderful school year 2025, 2026. Here we come. You got this. Hello, everyone.